In the dead hours between midnight and 3 a.m., the New Jersey Turnpike is a place you don't want to be. Not because of the drivers, not because of the weather, because of the rules. I'm a toll booth cashier. Every night, my phone buzzes with instructions I never signed up for, never greeting certain cars, never looking into the fog, never pressing my hand to the glass when something on the other side does first. I've learned to follow them. I've seen what happens if you don't. But lately, the rules have started to contradict each other. And now, there's another booth out there, and someone inside it wearing my face. Welcome back, friends, to another sleepless night. The rules are darker, the fog is thicker, and tonight's chapter may be the one we don't come back from. So grab your blanket, kill the lights, and stay until the end, if you can. I never thought much about toll booths before I started working in one. To me, they were just small boxes of glass and steel where people in reflective vests sat, took money, and lifted a gate. But when I answered the classified ad for Night Cashier, NJ Turnpike, Sector 13, I had no idea that my life was about to get swallowed by something far stranger than late night traffic and spare change. The first thing I remember was the quiet. It wasn't the kind of quiet you get in your bedroom at night, where the hum of the fridge in the kitchen still seeps through the walls. This was a dead, heavy silence that pressed in on my ears when I first stepped into the booth. It stood at the far end of an almost deserted stretch of the New Jersey Turnpike, where the road curved just enough that you couldn't see more than a few hundred feet in either direction. The headlights of passing cars came in sharp bursts, like camera flashes in the dark, and then vanished into the black. The booth itself was nothing more than a cramped rectangle, 2 chairs, a counter, a drawer for change, and the small metal lever that controlled the gate. The fluorescent light above me buzzed faintly, giving the whole place a faintly sick glow. The air smelled faintly metallic, as if someone had been cleaning coins with vinegar. The man training me that night was named Dale. He was thin, pale, and had the sort of eyes that always seemed to be darting toward the corners, as if checking for something. He didn't waste time with small talk. He handed me a worn laminated sheet of paper before I could even sit down. "Read this. Memorize it," he said, his voice low. It wasn't a training manual. It was a list of rules. 1. Always keep the window half shut after midnight. Do not open it fully for any reason. 2. If a driver stops but does not roll down their window, do not speak first. 3. When a car passes without stopping, do not attempt to record its plate number. 4. Between 1:13 and 1:19 a.m., no cars will come. If one does, lower the gate and look away until it leaves. 5. If you hear someone knocking on the back of the booth, do not turn around. There is no back door. 6. Keep the radio on static after 2 a.m. It drowns out other sounds. 7. Dawn does not always look like dawn. Wait for the clock to say 6:15 before leaving. I looked up from the sheet and gave him a half smile, expecting him to laugh. "What is this? Some kind of hazing thing?" Dale didn't smile back. "They'll make sense later. Just follow them." He didn't explain further. For the next 2 hours, we handled a slow trickle of vehicles, mostly truckers, a few sleepy drivers heading south, a couple of young guys laughing too loud with fast food wrappers in the back seat. Dale worked with quick, precise movements, always glancing at the clock, always watching the mirror on the far wall that reflected the stretch of road behind us. It was close to 12:30 when I noticed him close the sliding window halfway and lock it in place. I asked why. He didn't answer. Midnight traffic was slower, maybe 1 car every 10 minutes. The wind outside picked up, whistling against the booth walls, and a low fog began to gather over the road. The booths on either side of ours were dark, their windows black, the workers already gone home. At exactly 1:13 a.m., Dale put a hand on my arm. "Watch the clock," he said. "Do not look outside until it says 19. I frowned. "Why?" "You'll see." He stopped, then shook his head. "Actually, you won't. That's the point." We sat there in silence. The minute hand ticked forward with slow, heavy clicks. At 1:16 a.m., I heard the hum of an approaching engine. My eyes instinctively turned toward the road. Dale's voice snapped out like a whip. "Gate down, look at the floor." I obeyed, more out of surprise than fear, pulling the lever so the striped arm lowered. I stared at the faded linoleum at my feet. The engine's sound grew louder, but it was wrong. thick, uneven, as if it was running underwater. Then the headlights hit the booth walls, but the light was dimmer than it should have been, flickering like candlelight. I wanted to glance up just for a second, but Dale's hand was gripping my shoulder hard enough to hurt. We stayed that way, not speaking, until the sound faded into the fog. At 1:19 exactly, he let go. "What was that?" I asked. He rubbed his forehead. "Not something you want to see twice. You'll understand one day. Maybe." The rest of the shift passed in uneasy quiet. At 2:02, Dale turned the small desk radio to a static-filled frequency. It hissed constantly, drowning out the wind outside. At one point, I thought I heard faint tapping against the back wall of the booth. When I turned my head, Dale said sharply, "Rule 5, don't." When 6:15 came, the sky outside was a pale, watery gray. The sun should have been brighter, but I didn't question it. I was just glad to see Dale stand up, grab his jacket, and tell me my training was over. "Tomorrow night, you're on your own," he said. "Remember the rules, and if you ever think about breaking them, don't." I didn't sleep well that day. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept thinking about the dim, flickering headlights that passed during those forbidden minutes, and the strange, wet hum of the engine. Something about it didn't sound like any car I'd ever heard. When I woke in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was just one sentence. "You didn't look." Good. The following night, I arrived at the toll booth 15 minutes early. The fog from the night before hadn't gone anywhere. It hung low and heavy over the turnpike, swallowing the road on both ends so completely that it felt like we were cut off from the rest of the world. The cold was sharper too, the kind that sinks into your clothes and makes your breath visible. Dale wasn't there. I found the booth dark, the door locked. I fished the key out from under the plastic mat just as he told me, flicked the lights on, and settled into the chair. The inside smelled the same, metallic with a faint scent of old coffee, but without Dale sitting across from me, the space felt smaller, more suffocating. The laminated rules were still on the counter where I'd left them. I picked them up again, scanning each line slowly. It was strange. Reading them in the daylight, they looked absurd. Keep the window half shut? Don't look at the car between 1:13 and 1:19? Pretend there's no knocking? It read like a bad prank. But at night, the memory of those flickering headlights and that strange engine hum kept me from dismissing them entirely. By 11:30, the traffic was slow and predictable. Truckers mostly, giving me tired nods as they rolled through, some paying in cash, others tossing coins into the automated basket. One man in a silver sedan handed me his toll with both hands shaking. His face was pale and drawn, and his eyes darted toward the road behind him before he sped off without a word. Midnight came. I slid the window halfway shut just like Dale had. The sound of the road seemed different when you were enclosed like that, muted but somehow heavier, as if the darkness itself was pressing on the glass. By 12:50, I was already counting down to the strange gap in traffic Dale had warned me about. I'd made up my mind not to test it. No looking, no questions. At 1:13 exactly, I lowered the gate and fixed my eyes on the linoleum floor. My hands gripped my knees to keep myself from turning toward the road. The hum came again. That same muffled, submerged drone. But this time it was closer, slower. My chest tightened. The headlights seeped through the fog, weak and flickering. Something about the light made my skin crawl. It wasn't yellow or white like normal headlights. It was a pale, almost bluish glow like moonlight on water. The vehicle stopped. I could feel it. Something about the way the vibrations ran through the floor told me it was right there in front of the booth, inches from the glass. The static on the radio crackled louder, and I realized my breath was coming fast. Then I heard it, a faint sound just under the hiss of the static. Drip, drip, drip. It was coming from outside, slow and deliberate, as though something was leaking from the vehicle and hitting the pavement in thick drops. My eyes twitched toward the window before I could stop myself. I didn't look directly at the car, but in the corner of my vision, I saw a shape in the driver's seat. The silhouette was wrong. The head was too low, the shoulders too wide. And it wasn't moving. Not to reach for change, not to open the window. I forced my gaze back to the floor, gripping the sides of the chair so hard my knuckles ached. The hum deepened, and the dripping grew faster. Then, without warning, the car rolled forward. The pale light vanished into the fog. When the clock hit 1:19, I lifted the gate and sat frozen for another full minute. My hands were trembling. I told myself I hadn't broken the rule completely, that I hadn't looked straight at it, but I'd seen enough to make my stomach twist. The rest of the shift dragged on in uneasy silence until 1:57 a.m., when I remembered the next rule: static after 2. I turned the knob on the radio until the hiss filled the booth again. That's when the knocking started. It was faint at first, 2 slow taps, like someone testing the wall. I froze, staring at the counter. Then came 3 more, slightly louder, directly behind me. Rule 5. There is no back door. The knocks grew rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. I clenched my jaw and kept my eyes on the clock. My hands were slick with sweat. The sound seemed to come from just a few inches behind my chair. Then a voice joined it. It was a whisper, low and breathy, almost too quiet to hear over the static. I couldn't make out the words, but it was right against the wall, just behind my head. The knocking stopped. The whisper didn't. It went on for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than a minute. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the sound faded. I was left alone with the hiss of the static and the faint whistle of wind outside. At 6:15, I stepped out of the booth. The fog was still thick, but I could just make out the wet sheen of the road in both directions. I turned to lock the booth door and froze. The back wall, the one that was supposed to be solid metal, had a smear on it, dark, wet, and running downward in streaks. It hadn't been there when I started my shift. When I got home, I tried to tell myself it was condensation, maybe just moisture collecting from the fog. But condensation doesn't smear in long vertical lines like something dragged its fingers down the metal. I didn't sleep that day either. The next evening, just before my shift, I got another text from the same unknown number. You almost looked. Don't be curious. If you want, part 3 will have a driver who speaks to the narrator in a way that proves they know about the rules and hints that some people never leave the toll road at all. By the time my 3rd night rolled around, I'd convinced myself that I could handle it. The rules weren't hard to follow, I told myself. Keep your head down, don't be curious, and the shift would be just another long stretch of boredom broken up by the occasional toll. I was even starting to believe the strange events were just products of fatigue, nerves, and the eerie isolation of the place. That illusion lasted until a little after midnight. Traffic was steady for the first hour. Nothing unusual. Truckers with their glazed expressions, a couple of sedans, one compact car full of kids eating fast food. At 12:46, the fog began to thicken again, pooling on the asphalt in thick waves. The world outside my glass box narrowed to a circle of dim fluorescent light spilling out from the booth, beyond which was only shifting gray. I was leaning back in my chair, watching the minute hand inch toward 1:13, when I saw the headlights. They belonged to an old pickup truck. Faded blue paint, rust eating at the edges of the hood. It slowed as it approached, and I slid the window open halfway. The driver was a man in his 50s, maybe older, with deep lines etched into his weathered face. His eyes were dark, but there was something in them, a strange sharpness that made me uneasy. He handed me a crumpled bill without looking at me. "You're new here," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a weight to it. I hesitated, the bill in my hand. "Yeah, 3rd night." He nodded once, eyes still fixed on the road ahead. "Then you don't know what you signed up for." I tried to smile, to brush it off. "Guess I'm learning." He leaned slightly toward the window, his voice dropping. "Don't ever look at it, not even a glance. It wants you to." A chill went through me. "Look at what?" His eyes flicked toward the road ahead, where the fog was thickening into an almost solid wall. "If you don't know yet, keep it that way." He took his change, put the truck in gear, and rolled forward into the fog. The whole interaction lasted less than a minute, but I sat frozen in my chair long after he was gone, the words looping in my head. It wasn't just Dale who knew about the rules. This stranger did too. When 1:13 arrived, I lowered the gate and stared at the floor, my hands gripping the chair's arms until they ached. The hum came, softer this time, accompanied by that faint dripping sound. It rolled past slowly, the pale light flickering through the fog like it was struggling to stay lit. I kept my eyes down until the minute hand reached 19. No mistakes this time. At 1:57, I switched the radio to static. The hiss filled the booth, and I settled back, trying to steady my breathing. The knocking started again. 2 taps. Pause. 3 taps. I didn't move. The memory of that smear on the back wall kept my eyes glued to the counter. But this time, there was something different. Between the knocks, I heard the faint crunch of gravel, footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling the booth. Rule 5 didn't say anything about footsteps. They moved along the side of the booth, scraping faintly against the glass before returning to the back wall. The knocking resumed, faster this time. I turned the static up louder, but it didn't drown out the sound completely. The footsteps stopped, replaced by something else, a slow, wet dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the pavement. The radio hiss grew sharp, almost like a whisper hidden inside the static. I couldn't make out the words, but I could feel them pressing at the edge of my mind, cold and heavy. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse. The rest of the shift passed without another incident, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something had lingered just outside the fog. When 6:15 came, I stepped out into the damp morning air, locking the booth behind me. The road stretched away into the pale light, empty in both directions. I was halfway to my car when I saw it. In the thin strip of gravel behind the booth, there were tracks. Not tire marks, not footprints, something in between. The impressions were long and narrow, with deep grooves in the center, as if something with weight and a strange shape had been dragging itself along the ground. They led away from the booth and vanished into the fog beyond the reach of the streetlights. I didn't go closer. When I got home, the unknown number had sent me another message. "You're still here. That's good." This time, there was something else attached. A photo. It was of me, sitting inside the booth during my shift. The angle was from behind, and in the photo, just over my shoulder, the back wall wasn't empty. There was a dark human-shaped shadow pressed flat against the metal, its head bent at an unnatural angle. If you want, I can write part 4 next. This is when the narrator starts to hear the voice clearly for the first time, and a driver refuses to pass through because the thing in the booth is watching him. That's when the paranoia starts to take over. I didn't want to go back for my 4th night, but something about the booth, about the rules, had hooked into me. The text from that unknown number should have been enough to make me quit, but instead they made me curious. Whoever it was, they were watching me. Maybe they even knew more than Dale. It rained that night. Not a steady drizzle, but a cold, unpredictable mist that came in bursts, leaving beads of water clinging to the glass. The fog was still there too, so thick it was like the world ended 20 feet from the booth. I unlocked the door, flicked on the lights, and sat down. The static of the radio was still faintly hissing from the night before. I turned it off for now, no sense burning it into my ears before I had to. Traffic was lighter than usual. 2 trucks in the first hour, both drivers looking exhausted, but otherwise normal. A sedan stopped just before midnight. The driver, a woman in her 30s, handing me her toll with a forced smile. I noticed she kept glancing into her rearview mirror, like she expected something to appear behind her. When midnight hit, I slid the window halfway shut and tried not to think about the old pickup driver's warning. The clock seemed to slow as 1:13 approached. The sound came on time. That low, submerged hum accompanied by the faint dripping. I lowered the gate and fixed my gaze on the floor. The pale, flickering light rolled past, and though every nerve in me screamed to glance up, I didn't. But this time, something else happened. Underneath the hum, I heard a faint sound inside the booth. Not outside, inside. It was the radio. I turned it off earlier, but now it hissed softly, as if someone had switched it on without touching the dial. The static wasn't steady. It pulsed faintly, like breathing. And then, within the hiss, I heard something else. A voice. It was low, almost a vibration more than a sound. I couldn't make out the words, but they had a strange rhythm, like syllables drawn out in a language I didn't recognize. The hum outside faded as the unseen vehicle disappeared into the fog. The clock reached 1:19, and I lifted the gate with hands that felt like ice. The radio went silent again. I didn't touch it. At 1:57, I reached for the knob to turn it back to static, just like the rules said. The hiss filled the booth immediately, but now I couldn't unhear the voice buried inside it. It was clearer this time. Still low, still rasping, but just enough to make out words between bursts of static. It was saying my name. Slowly, over and over. The knocking began on the back wall. I gripped the edge of the counter, refusing to turn around. The knocks came in groups of 3, spaced evenly apart. The voice kept saying my name, but now it added something else. Come out. The 2 words bled into each other, almost like a sigh. The knocking stopped, but the voice didn't. It repeated the same phrase, soft and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. Come out! Come out! The hiss grew louder, the voice straining against the static. I pressed my hands against my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound wasn't just in the radio anymore. It was inside my head. I don't know how long it went on before I realized someone was standing at the window. I froze. It was a man, maybe mid-40s, wearing a rain-soaked baseball cap. His eyes were wide, darting between me and the fog behind him. He slid a bill toward me, but his hand was shaking violently. You need to close that booth, he said. His voice was hoarse, urgent. Close it right now. I stared at him. Sir, I can't. You don't get it, he interrupted. It's in there with you. The words hit me harder than they should have. He wasn't looking into the booth like a man speaking to someone safe behind glass. He was looking like he was afraid for me. Before I could respond, he threw the truck into gear and sped off, disappearing into the fog so quickly I barely saw his taillights. The static was still hissing. My name still whispered inside it. When the shift finally ended at 6:15, I stepped outside to find the fog heavier than ever. I locked the booth and headed to my car, but as I passed the back wall, I stopped. The smear from 2 nights ago was gone. In its place were words. They were written in long, dripping strokes, as though traced by a wet finger. Come out. When I got home, I didn't even bother taking off my jacket before checking my phone. There was a new message from the unknown number. Don't listen to it. It lies. By the time my 5th night rolled around, I decided to keep my phone on the counter during the entire shift. The messages from that unknown number came without warning, and I'd started relying on them more than the actual rule sheet. Whoever it was, they seemed to know exactly what was happening. The weather had shifted again. No rain, but the fog was so dense it beaded on the booth's glass, distorting the streetlights into pale, bleeding circles. The damp made my fingers ache as I counted out coins for the first driver of the night, a young man with eyes fixed straight ahead, as if he didn't want to acknowledge I was even there. By midnight, I'd already run the rules through my head twice, repeating them like a mantra. Keep the window half shut. Don't speak first if they won't roll down their window. Don't look at the 113 car. Don't turn around when there's knocking. Static after 2 a.m., it should have been easy. At 113, I lowered the gate and stared at the floor, determined not to slip up. The hum came, as steady and unnatural as before, followed by that slow, deliberate dripping. The pale flicker of its lights bled across the booth walls, but I didn't move. The sound faded by 118, replaced by silence. I lifted the gate at 19, feeling almost relieved. But then the radio clicked on. I hadn't touched it. The static poured out, filling the booth with that soft, irregular hiss, and then the voice came. It didn't start with my name this time. Cold in there, it whispered, slow and drawn out, almost teasing. I kept my eyes fixed on the counter. My heart was pounding. Doesn't have to be, it murmured. You can come out. Just a step. I gripped my knees. You're tired, it said. Your shift is long. I can make it easier. The voice was smoother now, almost warm. Not like the rasp I'd heard before. Something about it made my thoughts feel sluggish, like my brain was moving through water. Without realizing it, I muttered, no. The static stopped for a second, so brief I thought maybe I imagined it, before the voice returned, sharper now. You answered, it said, almost giddy. I knew you would. A chill ripped through me. I hadn't even thought about the fact that speaking to it was answering it. The knocking started immediately, fast, insistent, like fists pounding against the back wall. You don't have to be in there, the voice urged. You don't have to be alone. I pressed my palms against my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't in the air anymore. It was in my head. I glanced at the clock. 1:47. Too long until 2 a.m. and the official static rule. You think the rules keep you safe, it said, the words curling like smoke in my mind. But they keep you here. They keep you mine. The pounding grew louder. I felt the vibrations in the floor beneath my chair. My eyes were drawn, almost involuntarily, toward the back wall. Just before I turned, my phone buzzed. Don't speak to it again. The text snapped me out of the fog in my head. I stared at the screen until the knocking stopped. At 1:57, my hands shook as I switched the radio to full static. The hiss was like a wall between me and whatever was outside. I sat that way until my breathing slowed, though the voice still whispered occasionally, faint but persistent, like it was trying to find cracks in the barrier. The rest of the shift was quiet until just before dawn. It was 6:10, the minutes crawling toward my release, when a car approached, a dark sedan I didn't recognize. The driver rolled down the window without prompting. She was a woman, maybe in her 40s, wearing a black coat. Her skin looked pale, but not in a sickly way, more like the color had been washed out of her entirely. You shouldn't talk to it, she said. Her tone was calm, almost gentle. Once you start, it doesn't stop. I swallowed hard. Do you know what it is? Her lips twitched in something that might have been a smile. It's older than the road. The road just made it easier for it to feed. Before I could ask what she meant, she handed me exact change and drove off, disappearing into the fog like she'd never been there. At 6:15, I stepped outside. The fog seemed heavier than before, and as I walked toward my car, I noticed something in the gravel again. Tracks. But this time, they didn't lead away from the booth. They led toward it. When I got home, my phone buzzed one more time. It's closer now. Don't answer it again. By my sixth night, I'd learned two things. First, whatever was in the fog was patient. Second, it didn't like being ignored. The fog had settled low that night, a thick, soupy gray that seemed to muffle even the sound of passing cars. The booth's fluorescent lights cast a pale glow into it, but the beams didn't travel far, just illuminated the swirling mist before being swallowed whole. I told myself I wasn't going to make the same mistake as last night. No answering, no slips. Just keep my head down and ride out the shift. For the first 2 hours, it worked. I collected tolls from a handful of cars, most of the drivers barely looking at me. One man's hands were trembling as he passed me change. Another woman glanced in her rearview mirror twice before peeling away. By 1:13, my stomach was already tight with dread. I lowered the gate, eyes locked on the speckled linoleum floor, and tried to pretend the world outside didn't exist. The hum came again, vibrating deep in my chest, followed by the faint drip, drip, drip. The pale light seeped through the booth for a few seconds before fading into the fog. I didn't look. I didn't breathe until the minute hand ticked past 19. I thought maybe I'd escaped another night without incident. Then the knocking started. It was different this time, not sharp or impatient, but slow and deliberate. A single knock, a pause, another knock, and then a voice. Not the voice. This one was familiar. Mark? It was my sister's voice. I froze. She lived 2 hours away and had no idea where I worked. Mark, it's me, she said again, her tone shaky, almost pleading. Something happened. I need you to come out. I stared at the counter. It's not her, I whispered to myself. It's not her. Please, the voice said. I'm hurt. I can't see. I don't know where I am. My nails dug into my knees. The urge to turn around was almost physical, like my muscles were being pulled toward the sound. The voice cracked now, trembling. I'm scared, Mark. Why won't you help me? I bit down on the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Then came the worst part. She started crying. It was exactly how my sister cried, quiet at first, then shuddering sobs that made my chest ache just to hear them. I shut my eyes. It's not her. The crying stopped abruptly. When the voice spoke again, it wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. Mark, it said, perfectly mimicking my tone, just one step. A cold wave of nausea hit me. The clock read 1:56. One more minute until static time. Why are you making this harder? My own voice asked from behind me. The radio clicked on before I could reach for it, static spilling into the booth. The other voice faded for a moment, then returned, now inside the static, overlapping with the hiss. See, I can be in here too, it said, almost laughing. My phone buzzed. Don't react. Don't reply. The message was like a rope thrown to someone drowning. I gripped the counter until the minute hand reached 57 and twisted the dial hard. The static surged, drowning out everything else. The knocking stopped. The rest of the night passed without another sound, but I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. Even when a driver came through at 3:10, a tired-looking man who avoided eye contact, I could feel the weight of something in the fog, waiting for me to slip again. At 6:15, I left the booth, glancing at the back wall. No smears, no words, just wet concrete. But when I reached my car, I found something wedged under my windshield wiper. A folded piece of paper. No handwriting, no symbols. Just 3 words printed in block letters. I can wait. By the 7th night, the fog wasn't just outside. It felt like it had seeped into my lungs, thick and damp. Every breath tasted metallic, like breathing in old coins. I told myself I was ready. I'd learned the rules, obeyed the texts, and resisted the voices. But deep down, I knew something had changed after last night. The paper on my windshield had done more than creep me out. It made me realize it wasn't going anywhere. The booth felt colder than usual when I stepped inside. My hands shook as I set my phone down on the counter. Screen up. It started small. A driver at 12:45 stared at me for the entire transaction without blinking. A woman in a beige coat handed me an exact dollar in coins, every single one wet to the touch, though it hadn't rained in 2 days. By 1:13, I braced myself for the hum, the drip, the light. It didn't come. The car that should have been there never arrived. No lights, no sound, just the dense fog pressing against the glass like a living thing. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. My skin prickled with the same awareness you get when someone's standing behind you in a dark room. At 1:16, I heard something shift inside the booth. Not outside, not at the door, inside. The sound was soft, like fabric brushing against metal, but it was enough to make my chest tighten. My eyes darted around the booth. Everything looked the same. Then my phone buzzed. Don't look for it. The words made my throat close. If the message knew it was in here, that meant it wasn't just playing from the other side of the glass anymore. A few seconds later, the smell hit me. Damp, sour, like old mold clinging to wet wood. It was faint at first, then stronger, until it felt like the air itself was rotting. I kept my eyes fixed on the counter, but something brushed my ankle. It wasn't a sharp touch, more like the drag of cold, wet fabric. I gripped my knees so hard my knuckles went white. The urge to look down was unbearable. My brain kept whispering, what if it's nothing? What if it's just your bag? Something wet dripped onto my shoe. My phone buzzed again. Don't move. Every muscle in my body burned from the tension, but I didn't move. The thing brushed past my other ankle, slow and deliberate, like it wanted me to know it was there. Then it stopped. The booth went silent, except for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. I risked a glance at the clock. 1:28. Too early for static. Too early for safety. The smell faded. The air felt lighter. I thought maybe it had gone. Then the glass in front of me fogged over. A shape leaned in from the outside, only I realized with a jolt that the glass fogging was inside. The outline was wrong. Too tall, too thin, with shoulders that sloped forward like they were melting. It didn't move for a long moment. Then a slow, deliberate handprint appeared on the glass. 5 long, thin fingers, each ending in a point. The print stayed there even as the fog faded, like it had been burned into the glass. The next few hours were quiet again, though every second felt stretched thin, ready to snap. At 5:58, a car finally pulled up, a delivery truck. The driver, a man in his 50s, leaned out the window. "You see it yet?" he asked. I stared at him, unsure I'd heard right. "The thing," he said, eyes darting toward the booth's glass. "You'll see it soon. Don't worry, it's always patient." He tossed a handful of coins onto the counter and drove off without another word. When my relief came at 6:15, I didn't wait. I stepped out into the fog, head down, and hurried toward my car. That's when I saw it. The long, wet handprint was no longer on the booth's glass. It was on my driver's side window. The handprint on my car stayed in my mind all day. I didn't wash it off. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it in the morning light and thought about how it got there without me hearing anything. By the time I got to the booth for my 8th shift, the glass felt like it was holding its breath. The air inside was heavier than usual, warm in a way that made my skin itch. My phone was already in my hand, waiting for the first buzz. It came at 12:04. "Stay in your seat tonight. I didn't like how specific that was. The first hour passed without incident, though every passing car seemed a little off, drivers glancing at the booth in unison, like they'd been told to look at me at the same time. 113 came and went without the hum, without the dripping. I almost convinced myself I was in for another quiet night like last time. Then the lights went out. Not the booth lights, the road lights. Every street lamp along the stretch of road in both directions blinked out at once, swallowed by the fog. The booth's own flickering tubes were the only source of light for what felt like miles. The fog pressed closer to the glass, heavy and suffocating. And then something knocked. Not on the back wall, not on the side, but on the floor. It came from directly beneath my chair, dull and hollow, like there was a crawl space under the booth I never knew about. I was still staring down at my shoes when I felt it. Fingers, cold, damp, curling around the edge of my ankle. The grip tightened before I could pull away. My phone buzzed so violently it almost slid off the counter. Don't let it drag you. The hand yanked hard, almost tipping me forward in my chair. My knee slammed into the underside of the counter. I dug my other foot into the floor, gripping the edge of my seat with both hands. The pull came again, stronger this time. I felt my heels slide along the smooth floor. My breath was coming fast now, ragged. I thought about reaching down to pry it off, but some part of me knew touching it would be worse. The booth creaked. I could hear it now, the wet drag of something shifting beneath me, pressing against the floor like it wanted to push through. I don't know how long the struggle lasted, maybe seconds, maybe minutes, but at some point the grip loosened. The fingers slid away, retreating into the silence beneath the booth. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally glanced at the clock, it was 1:44. My leg ached where it had grabbed me, and my sock was soaked through. I kept the static on for the rest of the night. The hiss became my lifeline, even when my ears started ringing from the constant sound. At 3:02, a car approached. It was an older man in a dark jacket. He didn't roll down his window, just held out a folded piece of paper. Against every rule, I took it. Inside was a single line, scrawled in frantic handwriting. If it gets both feet, it will keep you. I stared at the words until the man drove off into the fog without paying or waiting for change. The rest of the shift passed without another attempt. But when I stepped outside at dawn, I noticed the ground behind the booth. The gravel there wasn't flat anymore. It bulged upward, like something was pressing from underneath, waiting for me to sit down again. By my 9th night, I'd started wondering if the rules were meant to protect me or to keep me here. The text had been my lifeline so far, guiding me through each night like a voice from someone who'd been through this before. But now, after the hand beneath the booth, I couldn't stop thinking about that note from the old man. If it gets both feet, it will keep you. Who wrote that? Why hadn't the text warned me sooner? I arrived just before midnight, the air heavy with fog that clung to my hair like damp cobwebs. The booth's fluorescent lights flickered twice before holding steady, a stuttering welcome that didn't feel like reassurance. My phone buzzed at 12:05. Follow the rules. It was the same wording it had sent me my first night. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. For the first hour, nothing happened. Cars came and went, drivers handing over exact change, faces blank. The minutes slid by in uneasy silence until the clock hit 1:13. The hum came, but it was quieter this time, buried under a different sound, a faint whisper, too low to make out, like someone trying to talk through a wall. The dripping followed, irregular, as if something above me was leaking onto the roof. Then my phone buzzed again. Ignore the rules. I stared at the message, my stomach flipping. My fingers hovered over the screen, wanting to type something back, but I stopped. The rules had always been one way. I didn't know what would happen if I broke that. Another buzz. Tonight is different. My hands went cold. The booth suddenly felt smaller, the glass thicker, like it was sealing me in. At 1:17, headlights appeared in the fog, but they were wrong. Dim, yellow, swinging slightly from side to side like the car was weaving. When it pulled up, the driver's seat was empty. The passenger window rolled down slowly. No one inside, just the smell of wet earth and something sweet rotting. The gate stayed closed. I didn't move. My phone buzzed again. Collect the toll. Another buzz, immediately after. Don't open the gate. I froze. Both messages were from the same number, same timestamp. I stared at the empty car. The driver's door opened with a groan, though no one stepped out. Something, low and crawling, moved in the fog around the back of the car. My phone buzzed again. Hurry! I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. I could obey one message or the other, but not both. The thing rounded the corner into view. It was too short to be human, its limbs long and bent wrong. Its head, or what should have been its head, was smooth and featureless, like clay pressed flat. It stopped at the open driver's door, tilting that blank face toward me. My phone buzzed again. Close your eyes. The message felt different, sharper, urgent. I didn't think. I shut my eyes tight, heart hammering. I heard it moving, fast now, skittering on too many joints. Something tapped the glass right in front of my face, once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, the car was gone. The road was empty. I looked down at my phone, but the last 3 messages had vanished. My screen only showed the old list of rules I'd taken a screenshot of weeks ago. The clock read 1:21. My shift still had hours to go. The 10th night began with the fog already thick enough to blur the headlights of cars just a few feet away. It swirled unnaturally, like there were currents inside it, slow and deliberate. I'd started my shift early, hoping that being in the booth before the worst of the night came would help. It didn't. The booth felt colder than usual, though the heater hummed steadily. My phone sat face up on the counter, waiting for the first message. 12:01. Nothing. Still nothing. It was only at 12:34 that I noticed something strange, not from my phone, but through the fog. There was a light ahead, faint at first, like the glow of another toll booth down the road. But that couldn't be right. This stretch was isolated. My booth was the only one for miles. I leaned forward, squinting through the glass. The light was definitely there, a pale, flickering square in the distance. The fog shifted just enough for me to make out the faint outline of another structure. It was a toll booth. Same size, same shape, same glow of flickering fluorescent lights. And there was someone inside. I couldn't see details, just the silhouette of a figure behind the glass, sitting in the same position I was, facing forward. I picked up my phone to check the time. 12:37. No messages yet. When I looked up again, the silhouette was standing, not moving, just standing, staring in my direction. The fog swirled thicker, swallowing the figure for a moment. When it thinned again, the booth seemed closer. Impossible, like the distance between us had halved without me noticing. That's when my phone buzzed. Don't wave. I set the phone down slowly, forcing my hands to stay on my lap. Through the glass, the figure moved. Not walking, exactly, more like sliding forward in short, stuttering motions. The fog kept swallowing it and spitting it back out, each time a little nearer. The booth behind it seemed to stretch and bend, the angles wrong, the glow inside pulsing like a heartbeat. My phone buzzed again. If it reaches you, you will have to switch. Switch? Switch what? Places? The figure kept coming. I could see its arms now, too long, the elbows bent the wrong way, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, as if studying me. 12:41. The figure stopped. It was close enough now that I could see the glass of its booth clearly. There was no reflection. It raised one hand, palm out, and pressed it against the inside of its glass. My phone buzzed. Don't press back. The fog churned violently now, whipping between us like a storm. For a second, I thought I saw my own reflection in its booth's glass, not the figure's, but mine, sitting inside staring back at myself. Then the light in the other booth went out. When it came back, the booth was gone. Only empty fog remained. I sat frozen until 1:13, when the hum and drip began as usual, like nothing had happened. But for the rest of the night, every time I looked into the fog, I had the sickening feeling the other booth was still there, just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to come back. If you want, part 11 will be when the other booth returns, but this time it's not empty. It contains something wearing the narrator's own face, and the rules start contradicting each other so badly that obeying any of them might be wrong. By the time my 11th shift came, the fog already felt like part of the job. It rolled in every night, blanketing the road until I could barely see 10 feet past the booth. But tonight, it was worse, thicker, wetter, tasting faintly metallic when I breathed it in. The air inside the booth felt close, like the glass walls were leaning inward. I kept my phone in my hand from the moment I sat down, waiting for the first message. 12:04. Don't look for it tonight. I didn't need to be told what it meant. The other booth. The silhouette. I told myself I wouldn't look, but my eyes betrayed me. Every time a car's headlights cut briefly into the fog, I searched the darkness beyond, wondering if I'd see that faint glow again. The hum started early, 12:28, and this time it was joined by a faint scraping sound, as though something metal was dragging along concrete far away. 12:33. Faint at first, but steady. I gripped the edge of the counter. This time I didn't need the fog to thin. I already knew what I'd see. The other booth stood exactly where it had been before. But tonight the light inside wasn't flickering. It burned bright, steady, white. And inside, it was me. Not a silhouette, not a distant shadow. Me. Sitting in the chair, arms folded on the counter, head tilted in a posture I recognized because it was mine. I think I stopped breathing. The other me leaned forward, smiling in a way I never do. Too wide, too stiff, like someone stretching skin over teeth that didn't fit. My phone buzzed. Don't move. The other me stood up slowly, keeping that smile, and pressed a hand to its booth's glass. I remembered the last time, don't press back, and stayed perfectly still. My phone buzzed again. Keep still until it leaves. But then another buzz. Go to it before it comes to you. Same number, same timestamp. I felt sick. I set the phone down like it was burning me. The other me was closer now. Just like last time, the fog seemed to pull it forward in short, jarring jumps. The booth behind it warped and twisted, almost bending around its shape. At one point, it vanished into the fog entirely, and for a few seconds I let myself hope it was gone. Then a knock came. Not on the glass in front of me, on the back wall of the booth. I spun around. Nothing. When I turned back, the glass in front of me was dark. No reflection, no headlights. Then my own face slammed into the glass from the outside. I fell back in my chair, my phone skidding across the counter. The other me was right there, grinning, lips peeling back from teeth that were too long, too thin. It mouthed something I couldn't hear, its breath fogging the glass. Then my phone buzzed. Don't open the door. Another buzz. Open it now. My breathing was shallow, rapid. I didn't move. The other me stopped smiling and tilted its head slowly, like it was disappointed. It turned away, and for the first time I saw the back of its head. There was nothing there. Just smooth, pale skin stretched taut over bone. It began to walk toward the side of the booth, vanishing from view. I knew what that meant. The door. I scrambled to grab my phone. Lock it! My hands shook as I turned the latch. Then a second message. It's already inside. The cold hit first, an unnatural chill that didn't come from the door or the glass, but from behind me. I turned slowly and saw myself sitting in the chair across the counter. But there was only one chair in the booth. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat locked tight, my chest heaving silently. It leaned forward, placing both hands on the counter, and the skin of its fingers looked too thin, stretched to the point of tearing. Its mouth moved again, shaping the same words it had at the glass. This time I heard them. Your shift's over. The lights flickered, and when they came back, I was alone again. The booth door was still locked. The road was empty. But the clock said 3:00, and I had no memory of the past 2 hours. I almost didn't come back for the 12th night. After what happened last time, after seeing myself inside the booth, after losing 2 hours I couldn't explain, I thought about quitting. But the thought of not showing up felt worse. Like if I didn't come, something would still find me, somewhere else, and I'd have no glass walls or rules to keep it out. So I came. The fog was already waiting. It wrapped around the booth in thick curls, muffling every sound. Even the low hum of the lights felt distant, like it was coming from underwater. The heater wasn't working tonight, but the air wasn't just cold. It was heavy, the kind of weight you feel in your lungs. 12:01. My phone buzzed. Tonight you choose. I stared at the words. No other instructions followed. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. No cars, no dripping, no hum. Just the fog pressing in on all sides. Then at 12:23 the hum returned, but deeper, vibrating the glass under my palms. The floor creaked beneath me. I froze. That was new. I looked down. The seam where the floor panels met seemed wider somehow. In the faint glow of the booth's lights, I saw movement, slight, slow, something shifting in the darkness below. My phone buzzed. Stay off the floor. I pulled my feet onto the chair instantly. A wet, dragging sound rose from beneath, like something was pulling itself closer. The smell hit next, rot and damp earth. Then another buzz. It's at the door. The knock came a second later. Slow, measured. I turned my head and saw the silhouette through the glass. My silhouette. It smiled, the same way it had before, too wide, too stiff. My phone buzzed twice, the messages arriving almost together. Open it and switch. Don't open or you're theirs. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles ached. My other self tilted its head, placing one hand flat on the glass. Below me, something scraped at the underside of the floor. Another buzz. If the floor breaks, they take you. My weight shifted on the chair. I didn't know how long it would hold. The seams below widened just a little more, and I saw fingers, long, gray, and too thin to be human, curling upward. The other me knocked again, harder this time. Buzz. Choose now. My breath came fast and shallow. If I stayed, the floor would give. If I opened the door, I didn't know what switch meant, though I had an idea, and it didn't end with me leaving alive. The chair wobbled beneath me. The fingers from below scraped higher, searching. The other me leaned close to the glass, its mouth shaping the same words as before. Your shift's over. The phone buzzed one last time. Only one stays. The floor cracked beneath the chair leg. I had maybe seconds. I looked at the door. The lock seemed smaller than it should have been. Fragile. The knock came again, but this time it was in perfect rhythm with the pounding from underneath. I made my choice. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't remember the exact moment the cold hit me or the sound of the chair crashing through the floor behind me. I just remember stepping forward and seeing my other self step inside as I did. The fog swallowed everything after that. When I woke, I was standing inside the other booth. The glass was thicker here. The light flickered endlessly. The road outside was empty, except for a faint glow far away. Another booth. I saw someone inside it. They looked a lot like me. My phone buzzed. Follow the rules, and that's where we leave the booth, for now. The fog's still out there, waiting. If you made it this far, you know the rules can save you. Sometimes. Like, share, and subscribe before your shift begins.